Welcome to the Uranium Unleashed podcast. The world's only operating Russian-built nuclear power plant has been struck 4 times in 5 weeks, and uranium is still at $84 a pound. Today we ask the question serious uranium investors need to answer. Is that a rational market or a blind spot?
Yeah, and I mean, it is a glaring contradiction, right?
Yeah.
You have a physical reality on the ground that's just escalating so dangerously, and then you look at the financial reality on the screen, and it's projecting total stability.
Right. And for this deep dive, we've got a whole stack of intelligence briefings, IAEA incident logs, market data, and we really need to unpack this because I'm looking at oil markets and, a single rumor of a tanker rerouting causes a massive spike, but uranium is completely insulated.
Exactly. And to understand why, we have to look at Bushehr not just as some power plant in Iran. I mean, it is Rosatom's flagship overseas reactor. They built it, they fuel it, they service it. It's fully integrated into their ecosystem.
Which is huge because Rosatom isn't just a domestic player. I mean, they control what, like 40% of global enrichment?
40%, yes.
Okay.
And they have over 20,000 megawatts of overseas projects right now. So Bushehr is basically their proof of concept for nuclear energy export.
So if it gets destroyed or if it triggers some kind of radiological incident, that's not just a localized problem. That damages their credibility in every single country where they're currently building.
Exactly. I mean, Turkey, Egypt, Bangladesh, they're all watching this. But before we get into the market implications, we really need to lay out the timeline of what's actually happening on the ground. Because the IAEA logs are severe.
Yeah, let's go through the facts, point by point. So, fact 1, the timeline. The intelligence briefings state that the U.S.-Israel war on Iran begins on February 28, 2026. And since then, there have been 4 documented strikes near the facility through April 4th.
Right, 4 strikes in just over a month. And that April 4th strike is really the one that changed the entire threat level.
Yeah, that's the one that hit just 350 meters from the reactor.
350 meters. Which, in the context of modern ballistic payloads or loitering munitions, that's basically a rounding error away from a direct hit.
Right, and it actually killed a member of the site's physical protection staff. It damaged an auxiliary building. It wasn't just a warning shot.
No, absolutely not. And the institutional response reflects that. You had Rafael Grossi, the Director General of the IAEA, getting personally alarmed. He issued a statement about the 7 indispensable pillars of nuclear safety being compromised.
And the Russian response was even more drastic, right?
Yeah. I mean, the CEO of Rosatom went on the record saying nuclear risk is rising daily. And within 20 minutes of that strike, they evacuated 198 Russian staff members, put them on buses to Armenia.
Wow. Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second here. If you're looking at the market, the reactor core itself hasn't been breached, right? It's still operating.
Yeah.
So isn't the market kind of justified in ignoring it?
Well, that assumes the only way a nuclear plant fails is a direct bunker buster to the containment dome.
Right.
But the engineering reality is way more fragile. You don't need to hit the core. You just need to hit the auxiliary infrastructure.
You mean like the grid connections?
Exactly. If a projectile severs the high-voltage transmission lines, you lose offsite power. That triggers a station blackout. The massive pumps that circulate water to cool the hot fuel, they stop.
And then you're entirely dependent on backup diesel generators.
Right. And if those fail, or if their fuel lines were damaged in the strike, you are on a very fast track to a core meltdown. So the market, assuming the asset is safe just because the dome is intact, it fundamentally misunderstands nuclear thermodynamics.
Which perfectly brings us to fact 2. The uranium price did not react to any of this.
It really didn't.
I mean, we look at the data. The spot price peaked at $101.41 on January 29th. That was before the war even started.
Right.
And since these 4 strikes, it's just drifted down to $84.
Yeah. And we have to look at that as a data point, not an editorial. The market has made a choice.
A choice to completely ignore the rockets landing 350 meters away.
Because the market is just a pricing machine. It's looking at very literal mathematical variables. It's pricing in known supply deficits. It's pricing in Kazatomprom's 10% production cut for 2026.
Right, because of the sulfuric acid shortage in Kazakhstan.
Exactly. So it weighs the acid shortage against the structural deficit, and it spits out $84. And since Bushehr is just a single 1,000 megawatt reactor operating on closed-loop Russian fuel, the algorithm just deems its destruction as mathematically irrelevant to the Western spot price.
So it's basically saying tragic, but it doesn't affect my spreadsheet.
Yes. That's exactly what it's saying. But
Right.
that is incredibly short-sighted because it's completely blind to fact 3.
Right. Let's get into fact 3, because this is where the intelligence briefings get really alarming. Iran holds roughly 400 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%.
Which is dangerously close to weapons grade.
Yeah. And our sources cite on-record reports of U.S. Special Forces actively planning operations to seize or neutralize that specific stockpile.
And that's not even the only documented risk. The World Health Organization has issued explicit warnings about the fallout risk if Bushehr takes a direct hit,
Yeah.
specifically regarding cesium-137.
Right, the isotope that contaminates topsoil and aquifers for decades.
Yeah, the exact same stuff that caused the exclusion zones at Chernobyl and Fukushima. But, Bushehr sits right on the Persian Gulf, which is a closed, shallow ocean system.
And the simulation run by the Qatari government, I mean, that part of the briefing was insane to read because those Gulf nations rely almost entirely on desalination plants for drinking water.
Exactly. And reverse osmosis membranes cannot filter out heavy radioactive isotopes. So if cesium-137 hits the water intake, the multi-billion-dollar desalination infrastructure is instantly bricked.
And Qatar literally runs out of municipal drinking water in 3 days.
3 days. Plus, you have the total paralysis of the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, no insurance underwriter is going to cover a supertanker sailing through a radioactive exclusion zone.
So global shipping halts.
Right. These are not speculative risks. These are documented, on-record warnings from top health and safety agencies.
So we have these 3 massive implications that the market is just completely missing. Let's break them down. Implication A is the reactor shutdown scenario.
Right. Even if there's no meltdown. Let's say Rosatom just has to abandon the plant because it's too dangerous. That is major credibility damage. Like we mentioned, Turkey, Egypt, Bangladesh, they're all watching.
Because if Rosatom can't politically or physically protect its flagship overseas reactor,
Yeah.
those client states are going to panic.
Exactly. They might pause or cancel those massive reactor builds. And if 20,000 megawatts of future capacity get removed from the board, that craters future uranium demand.
Wow. Okay. Then implication B is the actual radiological incident, the Gulf contamination we just talked about.
Yeah. And beyond the local devastation, that triggers a total narrative collapse for the entire nuclear energy sector.
Right, because the whole nuclear renaissance investment thesis relies on the public believing nuclear is safe.
Exactly. If coastal cities are being evacuated on the news, Western politicians will face immediate pressure to cancel new reactor projects. The algorithm is pricing in steady growth. It is not pricing in the political cancellation of nuclear energy overnight.
And then there's implication C, the enriched uranium seizure.
Right. If that 60% enriched stockpile becomes a military flashpoint, we aren't just talking about the uranium spot price anymore.
No, global risk premiums would reprice across every single asset class. Crude oil, natural gas, equities, everything.
Absolutely. The market is not charging a premium for any of these scenarios right now. And that is either correct or it's a catastrophic blind spot.
Which brings us back to you, the listener. Because you're watching a real-time stress test of how markets process geopolitical risk, the uranium market is a pricing machine. What it has priced in this year is supply deficits, Kazatomprom cuts, and enrichment tightness. What it has not priced in is a scenario where the world's most important nuclear energy company's flagship overseas project gets destroyed, and what that does to a dozen other countries currently building Russian reactors. That risk is real, it is live, and today it costs you nothing to hold it in mind. This has been Uranium Unleashed. Stay informed, stay ahead.